It is not musical. It is not meant to be. It is the sound of a city that believes it is the center of the world. And for this 1 century, it is not entirely wrong. Standing here in Baghdad, in the year 900, what strikes me most, after all the months I have spent researching this place, is not the scale of the round city. It is not the wealth of the Karkh market, not even the House of Wisdom. It is that nobody here this evening knows what is coming. Civilizations do not feel themselves falling. The people walking these streets tonight believe that what they see around them is permanent, because it has always been this way, and because they cannot imagine it ceasing to be, neither can we. Within 50 years of this moment, the Abbasid Caliphate will begin to fracture. Within 4 centuries, in the year 1258, the Mongol army of Hulagu Khan will destroy the city with such ferocity that the irrigation canals of Mesopotamia, built over thousands of years, will never fully recover. The House of Wisdom will burn. The books will sink into the Tigris. The Green Dome will fall. What Baghdad leaves behind is not its buildings. Almost nothing of them remains. What it leaves is its knowledge. The translations, the mathematics, the astronomy, the medicine, preserved in Arabic, copied and recopied, carried finally to Europe, where it will become the foundation of the Renaissance. The city that stood here was destroyed, but the ideas it held traveled further than any empire ever did. And that is the question I promised you at the beginning. The one I want you to carry with you today. What ideas are we building right now that will survive when everything else falls? If this journey through Baghdad moved you the way it moved me while making it, then I think you are ready for the next one. Because what we just walked through was a city built by conquerors who chose knowledge over destruction. The next city we visit made a different choice entirely. The Aztecs of Tenochtitlan built their capital on a lake in the middle of a valley, surrounded by volcanoes, and turned it into the most sophisticated urban engineering project the Americas had ever seen. Floating gardens, raised causeways, aqueducts carrying fresh water across open water. A market so large that the Spanish soldiers who first saw it said they had never seen anything like it in their lives. Not in Rome, not in Constantinople, not anywhere. That story is next. And I promise you, it is worth the wait. Arabic translation could be found on the same street as a new algebra treatise written by a student of al-Khwarizmi, the man whose name, when Latinized, gave us the word algorithm. Think about that. The mathematical concept that makes it possible for you to watch this video right now was born a few meters from where we are walking. Behind the market, the Tigris never rests. Teak wood from India, furs from the Slavic north, Chinese porcelain, African ivory. Baghdad, in the year 900, is the hinge of the world's trade routes, and the Karkh market is where that hinge turns. We cross one of the pontoon bridges over the Tigris and arrive in the eastern district of Al-Rusafa, in the neighborhood surrounding Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. The streets here are quieter. The houses are larger, their walls higher, their gates more ornate. The air smells different, like ink, like parchment, like the faint sweetness of courtyard gardens behind closed doors. The House of Wisdom is not one building, it is a complex, a library, a translation bureau, an observatory, an academy. Under the reign of the great caliphs, Harun al-Rashid and his son al-Mamun, scholars here translated virtually the entire known corpus of Greek science into Arabic. By the year 900, that project is largely complete, and what replaced it is even more extraordinary. Original research. The astronomers of Baghdad are not copying the Greeks, they are correcting them. They have measured the circumference of the Earth with a margin of error of just a few hundred kilometers from the real value. They have star catalogues more precise than anything Ptolemy ever produced. A child born here in the year 900 could grow up to understand the universe more accurately than any European scholar would for the next 600 years. But the most extraordinary thing about the House of Wisdom is not in the stars. It is in its doors. Muslims, Nestorian Christians, Jews and Zoroastrians worked here side by side. The admission criterion was not faith or origin, it was competence. If you knew something nobody else knew, this city found you, paid you, and gave you time to think. That idea was as radical in the year 900 as it would be in many parts of the world today. And now comes the part that is hardest for me to tell you. But hold on until the end, because first I need to show you the people who made all of this possible. Baghdad was not only palaces and academies. Let us walk further east, away from the grand avenues, into the residential neighborhoods, where the vast majority of this city's 1 million inhabitants actually lived. The streets narrow immediately. In some alleys, two people can barely pass each other. The houses are built from the same sun-dried brick that has been used in Mesopotamia for 5,000 years. The same material, the same technique, passed down through every empire that has ever ruled this valley. The smell is bread, always bread. The public ovens, the tabun kilns sunk into the ground and fed with palm fiber and dried dung, are the heartbeat of every neighborhood. Around them, the city's life organizes itself. The water carrier on his morning rounds, the barber working in the open air, children sent to fetch breakfast before the heat of the day makes everything difficult. Further on, workshops occupy the ground floors of houses. Tanners, blacksmiths, candle makers, weavers. In Baghdad, every trade has its street and its community. The practical knowledge of one generation passes to the next in the doorway of a shop, between one customer and the next. Children learn by watching. The elderly teach without knowing they are doing it. What strikes me every time I think about these people is how ordinary their lives were. Empires are built on greatness, but they run on this, on the daily rhythm of those who appear in no chronicle, who raised the walls and baked the bread, and raised the children who would inherit whatever the caliphs left behind. They are the true protagonists of this story. Before we leave Baghdad, we return to the river, because in the year 900, the Tigris is not simply a waterway, it is the living memory of this city. Stand on the eastern bank as the sun begins to fall. The pontoon bridges connecting al-Karkh to al-Rasafa are crowded with the end of the day's commerce. Merchants heading home, students returning from the House of Wisdom, soldiers changing shifts at the palace. The river carries something extraordinary in both directions. Downstream toward Basra and the Persian Gulf, Baghdad's manufactured goods, textiles, paper, luxury objects, destined for the Indian Ocean. Upstream, the raw materials that keep the city alive, timber, stone, livestock, grain from the fertile plains to the north. And then something happens that can only be seen from here. When darkness falls, the call to prayer rises from every minaret in the city simultaneously. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of voices, in an imperfect overlapping wave of sound that rolls across the water and echoes off the far bank. I want to ask you something. What if I told you there was a city more than 1,000 years ago where doctors were already performing cataract surgery, where astronomers measured the circumference of the Earth with a precision Europe would not reach for another 6 centuries, where you could walk into a bookshop on a Tuesday morning and buy a treatise on Greek philosophy, a manual on algebra, and a Persian poem all before noon? Would you believe that place was real? It was real, and it was not a utopia. It was not a myth. It was a real city, with real people, with real problems, that made a conscious and collective decision that knowledge was worth more than anything else. Today, we are going to take you back to that place, not to idealize it, but to show you what human beings are capable of when we decide to build instead of destroy. I have spent months reconstructing this place, image by image, source by source, because I believe there are stories the world needs to recover, not to idealize them, but to understand what human beings are capable of when we decide to build instead of destroy. What you are about to see will make you travel through time. Baghdad, in the year 900 after Christ. Reconstructed with artificial intelligence from historical chronicles, archaeological maps, and centuries of academic research, we are going to walk you through its streets, through the largest market in the world, through the institution that changed the history of science forever, through the neighborhoods where ordinary people lived, people nobody remembers, but who built all of this with their own hands. I am going to walk you through its streets, through the largest market in the world, through the institution that changed the history of science forever, through the neighborhoods where ordinary people lived, people nobody remembers, but who built all of this with their own hands. And at the end of this video, I want you to leave with something more than historical facts. I want you to leave with a question. One that, if you ask yourself honestly, could change the way you see the world we live in today. But before that, I need you to see this. In the year 900, Paris had 20,000 inhabitants. London, fewer than 15,000. Baghdad, between 500,000 and 1 million people. It was not just the largest city in the world. It was an entirely different category of human civilization, and almost nobody talks about it. That changes today. Welcome to Madinat al-Salam, the city of peace. We begin at the outer walls of the original round city, and the first thing that hits you is not beauty. It is the sheer, unapologetic arrogance of the scale. 3 concentric rings of walls, each one taller than the last. The outer wall stood over 30 meters high. In the year 900, these walls have been standing for nearly 140 years, and they still look like something that should not have been possible to build. We enter through Bab al-Sham, the Syrian gate, and the city immediately reorganizes itself around us. The streets are not chaotic, they are deliberate. Straight avenues radiating inward, like the spokes of a wheel, all pointing to the same place. At the center, the Golden Gate Palace, and above it, the famous Green Dome. Visible from kilometers away, travelers arriving on foot from Persia, from Syria, from Arabia, used it to orient themselves when the city was not yet visible on the horizon. The dome rose 40 meters above the ground. Beneath it, the Caliph received ambassadors, signed decrees, and administered an empire stretching from Spain to the edges of India. Now I want to tell you something almost nobody knows about this place. By the year 900, the caliphs had long since stopped living here. The round city had become purely ceremonial, a symbol of power, not its daily seat. The real machinery of the Abbasid state had moved east, to the palace district of Al-Rasafa, across the river. Why does that matter? Because it says something profound about how power works. Symbols sometimes outlive the reality they represent. And Baghdad, as we will see, is a city full of those paradoxes. We leave the round city through the southern gate and cross into al-Karkh, the great commercial district on the western bank of the Tigris, and everything changes. The noise here is overwhelming in a way that feels almost physical. This is not one market, it is dozens of specialized markets stacked on top of each other. The street of the booksellers, the perfume souk, the coppersmiths, the cloth merchants, the spice traders, the money changers. Let me stop here for a moment, because this matters. The souk al-Warakin, the street of the booksellers, is one of the most extraordinary places that has ever existed in human history. In the year 900, you could buy a book in Baghdad more easily than in any other city in the world. Paper had arrived from China via Samarkand decades earlier, and Baghdad's scribes had industrialized its production. A well-copied manuscript of Aristotle